Hey everyone. Okay, so here we are back in our English 1152, our poetry class. Quick look at our due dates. It's Wednesday, October 9th when I am recording this. Beautiful weather outside. So we'll take a quick look at Unit 5 then again, just to sort of recap where we've been. Finishing that up on the 9th here and looking for replies by the 11th, no later than the 11th. And then looking into Unit 6 and a little bit ahead because we have actually a set of related units coming up pretty soon here. So definitely by this point, hopefully people are really used to the due date structure and kind of how each unit is built. So hopefully that's not really an issue anymore. So we'll spend less time on that. But just a quick reminder then, doing our video essay. The point of the video being it's just nice to kind of like connect in that way with people, even if your face isn't on the camera. At least we're hearing your voice, a lot like what I'm doing now. It just kind of adds a sort of human touch a little bit to our online class. It lets you connect with classmates a little bit better. The other thing, maybe more pedagogically, is that it invites you to be a little bit more conversational in your analysis of the poems that we're working with here for this particular assignment. So again, rather than like typing out a whole essay and just like reading it as a script, you will ideally make some sort of notes for yourself, right? So you're not totally doing it blind, but for the most part, it's you just talking to us about your idea. So if, for example, because we want quotation from both texts, the poem and song that you're working with, to sort of prove the point that you're making, we would understand, for example, if maybe there's a little pause where you have to find a particular quote, like it won't come out immediately. Now, that being said, it doesn't mean that you just jump into this without having any idea and you kind of like find these things on the fly. So you do have to do a little bit of planning, but really the idea is that it feels like you're just sort of conversationally speaking to us, almost like teaching us about your topic. And again, like I've said previously, good evidence that you really understand something in a deeper way than just having memorized some stuff is that you can actually teach somebody else about it. In an ideal situation, we would or could be able to do this like real time, so then folks would ask you questions, and that's where you could really test your level of expertise, because you can memorize certain stuff and just speak it, but if I or somebody else then asked you a question, that really tests the depth of your knowledge. So anyway, the video essay is just kind of cool to do for our online class, but it does have some other purposes to it as well. But besides the video aspect of it, a fairly traditional kind of comparative analysis we're doing. And again, encouraging people to be creative with what we're actually seeing on the screen, in addition to your voice as the audio, especially for those who just don't want to be physically on camera, if that just makes you uncomfortable, it kind of gets in the way of you talking more freely or conversationally. So you can make some smart creative choices there. Okay, so that takes us into Unit 6. I'll just jump back to our due dates really quickly here. So we're looking at our usual setup with the Wednesday due date, Friday for replies, and we are pretty much midterm in our class. So that's kind of what we're going to do here, a midterm reflection, not a test or anything like that, but just a reflection. So you're going to, as usual, build out a portfolio page, call it, something like midterm review, midterm reflection, whatever you want. Here are our course objectives, which we've actually been referring to or alluding to really throughout our class. And you'll see that, there's 5 of them. We've pretty much been doing them in almost every unit, I think, which, kind of makes sense. But here we're going to be really intentional and in particular about connecting the work that we've done or connecting the work that you specifically have done for the class and the course objectives. So it's like a really good opportunity to remind yourself of why we're doing the things that we're doing. Oh, because they point to these larger objectives, or they show evidence of you having accomplished or completed the objectives. So they're all, I think, relatively straightforward. Survey and study a wide range of poems, different time periods, different cultural perspectives, different types of authors. I think we've done a pretty good job of that. Common elements, right? We've certainly spent time with the vocabulary, but also trying to focus on, think of when we wrote sonnets, for example, really focusing on rhythm, meter, and rhyme scheme, for example. Analyze and discuss, been doing that throughout. Evaluate and understand, oops, I gotta go somewhere. Understand poetry as a type of literature. I'm not gonna lie, I don't really understand what this one is getting at. I didn't write these objectives, I just have to teach to them. In fact, if we had, as a sort of literature department here at COD, the opportunity to review or revise these, I would maybe not get rid of this, but I would certainly revise it so it made more sense. My sense here is that, and you can interpret this however you want, is that poetry is a type of literature, maybe in the sense that it is not just an art form designed to have to produce an effect on you as the reader. In other words, you can say, I really loved this poem just because it made me feel a certain way. I really hated that poem because it was really boring. Like, you can have a subjective kind of reaction to a poem. And that's okay, right? But a lot of what we do needs to be a little bit more on the analysis side of things. So even if it's a poem that we read that you don't like, or you don't get, or it just doesn't resonate with you, you're like, that happens, that's okay. But we need to understand it as maybe important in a historical sense. Like in the tradition of literature, some particular poem is really important. Almost like literally in a history class. You don't have to like World War II to appreciate that this is a major historical event that we need to study if we're interested in history. So in the same way, there are particular like types of poems. Maybe you don't like sonnets, for example. But you do have to recognize that this is an important literary tradition that has dated back, centuries now, that lots of poets have participated in. So it's almost like we can have a subjective reaction to poetry, but there is the sort of literature analysis side that includes recognizing important poems that have existed throughout history for whatever reason. So that's sort of my take on that one. You might have some other ideas, but again, you can flesh it out the way that you want to. And then this sort of, again, is about that personal response to things, but also how poetry exists outside of just our personal reaction to it, or maybe us as a class or something like that. It has bigger public values or public implications or public uses. Think of the Poetry Everywhere Padlet that we did early on. That's a really good example of us trying to get at the public nature of poetry. Okay, so I've just given you a whole bunch of options here for answering this assignment or question. What you want to do is just choose 3 of the objectives, not necessarily all of them. Choose 3 and provide at least 2 examples of your work for the class that shows evidence, and you're obviously going to explain this at length in your portfolio here, that you have like accomplished or done that objective. So pretty straightforward. The only thing to be really careful about is that it is specific to your work, not just in Unit 2 we all did whatever, or in Unit 5 we all did whatever. Like, what did you specifically do? What was your post, or what was your thesis, or what was your thing that you actually did? So being really pretty specific about that, and then being really, really careful, almost like over-the-top careful, about connecting the dots between the example of your work and the particular objective. Even if you think it like goes without saying, quote, say it. Like, connect the dots in a really explicit way for me, so I'm not trying to guess or figure out like how you see these things as related. Be really, really specific about that. And so that's our midterm assignment. Again, kind of makes sense, right? We're halfway there. We're going to take a look at how we've been doing with achieving these course objectives. You're going to choose 3 objectives, 2 examples of your work for each, build it all out in your portfolio. So it's a lot of really like quoting yourself in many ways, okay? The other thing that's going to happen in Unit 6, and this is really just set up for Units 7 and 8, is we're going to embark on a group assignment here. And you maybe do these regularly in face-to-face classes, but maybe not so much online. I actually think it's a really important, and I can show evidence of like how I've arrived at this. It's a really important like academic life and professional skill to be able to work in groups virtually, asynchronously, so you're not all there at the same time, right? In digital spaces, whether it's docs or other collaborative things that we can work in. It's like a real skill. There's some, again, reports and research sources I can show you that major industry leaders are pointing to like that as the skill to have in the 21st century. But anyway, so it's a totally doable thing, but it is going to take some front end work just to make sure everyone is on board with like what the assignment is, what's the project we're going to work on, and who your group is, and making sure that all the group members have checked in and are like going to contribute faithfully to the group effort. So the very first thing we're going to do is I'm going to actually ask you to jump ahead into Unit 7 and 8 and just take a look at what we're going to do so you know what the assignment is. But then you can find your group assignment, and we're just doing this tentative right now, in this document in Unit 6. And so what you have to do as a group member is jump into the discussion board here and basically just say, hey, it's me. I'm Brooke. I'm with you guys, Stuart and Elena. Here's my email, or maybe here's my phone number if you're cool with giving that out, or here's my preferred method of communication. So we're not really doing any project work at all. We're just getting the team members together and connected with each other. That's all we're doing. And I can't stress enough, and this is like how we're going to make this work, is that if you do not post to your group on time for this, then you are not in that group, and you and I will have a conversation about what follows from that. But it's really important, for obvious reasons, that each of the groups connects with one another right here in Unit 6 before we even really get to brainstorming and early work on the projects in Unit 7 and then 8. So again, I think it's a really important skill to develop, maybe something you've never done before, which I think is even more reason to do it now. It actually works quite well when we make sure that we're set up from the beginning for success, and I've been really conscious to build it in our class where it's not like, here's your group, now the thing is due. There's lots of time for, again, brainstorming, project building, so this is not just a single unit kind of a deal. That's why I say that units like 6, 7, 8 really stack up together as all project stuff. In fact, even part of Unit 9 has us doing a sort of different kind of reply to it. Okay, so we have a bunch of those units going on, but Unit 6 is really important. Your primary work is doing your midterm reflection, but then don't forget to check in with your, with your group there. We also have a little survey that I'd like you to do. Again, ungraded, anonymous, takes 2 minutes, but do it. It's really good information for me. Okay, so hopefully everything's cool. If you run into problems, questions, concerns, by all means, be in touch with me, and I will check in with everybody in a couple days.